What's up, everyone? My name is David, and today I'm going to be talking about intentionality. And so, to do that, I will be reading a reflection that I wrote on an intentional meal that I had with a group for one of my other classes. Um, the class is very open ended, and so um, basically, the prompt was to just reflect on the meal we had with three people from my class that I really didn't know. And so I decided to take the route of intentionality with that. And well, my other class, presentational skills, that's brought me here to kind of do this YouTube video on the subject. And so, yeah, this is my attempt at public speaking on YouTube with my first video on that. And so I'm just going to start by reading the paper that I wrote. An intentional meal. Dinner is a sacred time. It makes up one of three staple meals in the day, the final one at that. It's a time that brings us together for most special occasions, but for me, dinner has always been rather casual. Rarely did my family sit around the table to eat. My mom would spend her time after a long day of work cooking a flavorful pot of sinigang soup, chicken adobo, or one of the other many recipes she mastered. I waited patiently for the words, "Dinner is ready," at which I would leave my spot on the couch or the bottom of my bunk bed to retrieve my plate. Typically, I would take my plate and retreat to my room, as did my sister. My dad sat on the couch watching Judge Judy as he sipped a non-alcoholic beer, and my mom would find a seat in the kitchen. This was the norm in my household. The time and place we ate was rarely the same. Coming into college, this has not changed much, especially during times like these, where my schedule has become twice as busy and time stays forever constant. The importance of dinner time, however, is not only to obtain nutrients. To thrive, all organisms must maintain homeostasis. In humans, maintaining homeostasis is not as simple as getting the right amount of water, vitamin C, protein, or anything else. A dinner that fulfills our hunger and quenches our thirst must include something else: connection. Despite this, having a truly sustaining meal is a struggle I and many others often find ourselves dealing with. While writing this reflection, my staff enjoyed a dinner at Hunt Hall, while I stayed in the isolation of my room, gobbling up a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and a bag of barbecue chips. Not only did this meal lack the ability to feed my mind, but it probably was not the best nutritional choice either. So why did I do this? I did it because of my perceived lack of time. But this is not always the case. I attempt to eat what I call an intentional dinner at least once a week. An intentional dinner is a pre-planned meal, one that has the purpose of more than simply nourishing my body nutritionally. An intentional dinner is more than a means of sharing a meal, it's a means of sharing a part of ourselves. As humans, this is a necessary task. We are social creatures, and our interactions with others is in many ways necessary to our survival, or at least our ability to thrive. The intentionality of dinner can be as big as a family gathering for Thanksgiving, or as small as a meal at the cafeteria with a friend. But most important of all, an intentional meal is one that sets aside time in a day specifically for the meal itself. Our lives become busy and overwhelming, so much so that we forget how to sustain ourselves. A meal is not just about the food, it's about the interactions that come with the meal itself. To sustain ourselves is a process more complex than feeding our bodies. We must also feed our minds. I always knew it was not the food that made a meal special. I believed it was the people. Through the shared experience with AD, Maya, and Charlie, however, I found this not to be the case at all. During our time at Kirby Lane, the one on the street is named after, I shared a meal with people I was relatively indifferent about, or at least at the time. I say this with no sort of disdain, but to simply indicate that it's not people that make a dinner significant. Looking back now, these are people I can say I care about, because in sharing a meal, they shared a part of themselves as well. In the weeks leading up to our dinner, we did the same, just to a lesser extent. During most group discussions in class, we stayed on prompt, with an occasional random question, but nothing that progressed past minor small talk. Even with outdoor activity, the one where we lay in the grass nothing truly came out of this experience. Why, you may ask? Each of these interactions lack genuine intentionality. When it comes to school, it's hard to be genuinely intentional because we simply go through the motions. I find myself continuously working towards a grade, analyzing how I can receive the best score on an assignment while trying to do the same for 5 others due that week. Our group dinner may have been an assignment, but it was nothing like that. Our dinner was not treated as one, nor did I ultimately see it as that. In a way, the lack of understanding about its purpose is what made it intentional and honest. As we arrived at the table outside of the hall for our drive to Kirby Lane, there was a very noticeable contrast. Our attires were completely different. Our tops ranged from colorful casual tees to full-on suits, but this was just a testament to the diversity of our group. Our differences were always what made conversation difficult, yet so intriguing. For the hour or so that we sat together, our dinner was the only thing that existed. As we indulged in an unhealthy amount of sugar, and I enjoyed a heaping pile of refried beans, we nourished our minds simultaneously. Living in the moment can be one of the most nourishing foods for the body. It allows us to put the stresses and anxieties of our lives to the side. The differences we shared at dinner paralleled every intentional dinner I've ever had. It has always been the differences that make dinner so special. The different political views held by my dad and his brother. The stories my sister shared at their varying life stages. It is ultimately these differences that made gathering together fun. These intentional dinners culminate in our presence in the moment. Hearing about Charlie's Civil War reenactments genuinely interested me, but only because I was not worried about the purpose of this assignment. I was not worried. Finding the cherry tomato in 80's car could have so easily been a foolish, meaningless part of my day, but because of our presence in the moment, that cherry tomato will forever stay in my memory. The purpose of the assignment was rooted in dinner all along. Intentionality kept us present, forming memories in the process. Within our zine, we capture these moments through the art of photography. From our diverse clothing choices to our server, and even the tomato, our zine will forever hold this moment in time. I recall my thoughts about this assignment before we had our dinner. I simply looked at it as another piece of homework, a box to be checked off as finished. In our discussions leading up to dinner, we were unable to schedule time to eat before spring break. This slightly bothered me. One more thing on my mind. I wondered why we would not just quickly have a meal at the hall at our university, even if it would not have been the most enjoyable time. Waiting to have our meal after spring break forced me to take this assignment off the back burner of my mind. I would have to see the assignment as a meal because I could not do anything but wait for the day to arrive. And in fact, this dinner was no different than any of the times that I asked my friends to join me at the hall, or the meals I ate with family every Christmas. Christmas is always on the calendar, so why is Christmas dinner never seen as a worrisome task? When we intend to share a meal, we never look at it as anything more than an opportunity to live in the moment. Every truly meaningful dinner I have is formed through intention, though my typical dinners coincide with the busy life I live. My family and I rarely ate dinner together, but it was because of our differences. The differences in work schedules, homework, obligations, even new TV episodes kept us from coming together and sharing a meal. As easy and impactful as a meal together is, it's never our first option. Life is busy, it rarely feels like it stops. We may have breaks in between, a few weeks of winter break for example, but then it's back to the everyday hustle and bustle. Ultimately, an intentional meal is our true only break. The meal I shared with my 3 classmates, just like any other moment I intend to share with others, parallels a more ideal life. It's what makes life truly less terrible. In these moments, only the presence exists, nothing else. So, despite being an assignment, my dinner with AD, Charlie, and Maya felt nothing like that. Simply put, our meal at Kirby Lane brought us together as we shared ourselves genuinely at the expense of time. Yeah, so that was really my idea on intentionality that I put into the reflection. The dinner itself really made me think about, the point of any dinner or the point of anything, really, and it comes down to intention. We get out what we put into things, and so by being intentional, I was able to really just like live in the moment with these people. And so what it brought to me was just a really, impactful and present moment, a time that I can look back on and say that I enjoyed because I genuinely took my time to make it nothing more than a moment in the present. Um, I think we often get caught up in the future, and while it's good to be, ahead on things and to be thinking 3 steps, 3 weeks, 3 years, whatever, in the future, I think it's also important to take time to live in the present moment because that's all we have. And in that dinner, that's what it really taught me. So it's just the power of intentionality, and that could go even farther. I guess if we wanted to focus more on intentionality, we could look at how that can impact our future as well. But for this case, it was the intentionality that made this aspect of my life successful. And I guess going forward, intentionality can be used for so many different parts of our lives. And, just being intentional with anything um, will bring you what you need and what you want. And so that's really what I gained out of this. Just wanted to sit here and just talk about my experience with that. And that's really all I've got. So thank you for listening.